короче, казус. Короче, казус, ну надо, сори. Кстати, да, проронил тоже. Короче, ситуация интересная, да? Сложилась. Грубо это очень, да. Какое ощущение где-то. Да, настройки да. Ну нет. Наверное, они там по-своему как-то понимают. Мне непонятно это. Спасибо. Спасибо. Опа! Ну я тогда уберу все шити. Штаги. Не мешает мне нифига. Наоборот, да. Наоборот тогда, да. Наоборот, да, наоборот. И что дальше? Ничего. Да, наоборот, да. Наоборот, да. Наоборот, да. Да, сегодня за кофе надо сходить. Кофан. Лагает вообще просто. Да, вот это тоже есть. Ты что, не переживаете? Ну да, как-то народу. Вот народу, да. Ладно. Да. Степанида.
write code. Tab 9 will speed.
Hey everybody, Noah Kelman here, and welcome to my channel about modern jazz piano. Today I want to do something kind of interesting and talk to you about mental practice techniques. So as someone who has gone through a lot of different injuries, and actually I'm dealing with a bit of an injury right now, one of the things I'm doing is spending a lot of time practicing away from the piano. And it's funny because every time I'm feeling amazing physically and I spend even hours a day at the piano, I start to actually forget just how much progress you can make away from the piano, and in some cases you can actually make more progress, right? So I want to show you some of the techniques that I actually use to really improve my playing without ever playing a note or even sitting down in front of a keyboard. In fact, these are so essential that I would very highly recommend you practice regardless of whether or not you are feeling physically and technically fit in your hands, right? These techniques have helped me personally, I think, build my ears so far, and I would not trade my time working on these mental techniques for anything. So, without further ado, let's check this out. So, one of the things I like to work on is taking a really tricky progression, something that I can't quite hear yet, and basically learning to improvise over it in my head. So what if we take something like giant steps, for example? So this is a really tricky one, right? We got B major to D7 to G major to B flat 7 to E flat major. Wow, okay. So one thing I will actually do, sometimes I'll start by just playing a bass note on the piano and actually singing an improvisation in my head. I'll try to sing this out loud for you, even though it's going to be painful. But normally I would do this in my head. And if I got stuck, I would stop. So you'll actually be able to notice in your head, are you really hearing what's happening? And if the answer is no, then I highly recommend that you simply stop and start again. So you can start, again, this is step one. You start with the bass note in your left hand and do this in your head. But then, step two is we're going to get rid of that bass note in the left hand and see if we can really hear the progression in our head as well. So. Wow, okay. So, sorry about that. Sorry that you have to listen to that. Normally I would just do this completely in my head, but I want you, of course, to hear what I'm hearing. So let's say that I messed up though. Let's say I couldn't get these first two chords. So I close my eyes and try to really formulate some lines. So I'm going to start on the fifth, F sharp. Alright, so that was very arpeggiated. Let's see if we can form something a little bit more bebop oriented here, a little more chromatic. Alright, cool. So you can hear how the gears are kind of turning. Now, I might not have been able to do this as fast at first, right? So I might have to really figure out some of these lines in my head, sing them over and over until I've got it. So, okay, that didn't work. Okay. Alright, so that is the process, right? It can be really painful and tedious, but this is how we do it. Now, once you can go through the whole song and do this comfortably, your next step is, I don't even want you playing a bass note in your left hand. I want you to actually just get into your head. First of all, you can start by just singing the progression. So we start with the first note. So you see I got a little tripped up there. I'm pretty sure I did the rest right, just singing the bass notes in my head, right? And I think I could still do that a little better than I did there, but you get the point. Because you want to really be able to visualize the notes in your head. You can actually check yourself like this. So, ba, 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 right? And just kind of go like that and so on. So if you're trying to learn a tricky tune, in my opinion, doing things this way is going to take you there much faster than simply playing it on the piano. Playing it on the piano, you're going to get away with cheating a little bit, cheating your ears. You're probably going to be playing things you're not really hearing. Doing it this way is going to ensure that you are hearing the progression, because you can't cheat when you're in your head, right? You're going to get mixed up. So once you've got that in your head, now I want you to actually be improvising in your head. All right, so let's give this a shot completely in the head. I'm going to just use a starting pitch. So let's see. There, I visualized myself landing on a D. I was a little flat, but yeah, landed on a D. Okay, let's try starting at the next part of the progression on a G. So that should be a B flat. I think I sang it a little flat. Cool, there we go. All right, cool. So I was able to know exactly where I was in my head and even know where I landed and check myself. So if you can actually do this, by the way, again, I would not sing this out loud normally. I would actually just do this in my head. But if you can do that, check against yourself and be like, cool, I'm nailing these changes in my head, then you know now you're ready to truly sit down at the piano and start improvising. Now you can do this kind of visual practice not just with lines, but even with chords. So, you know, a few videos ago I talked about singing up a chord, right? So if we have this chord, you have to go 1, flat, 7, 3, 13, 9. Ouch. Right? Be able to actually sing up it that way. Well, you could do the same thing in your head, right? Without ever being at the piano, you could actually learn voicings and even comp, right? And start to actually see and hear voicings in your head. So, these are some of my favorite practice techniques because I might be walking around, I might be on the move, I might be in the car, I might be walking around the store, and I can actually practice a song in my head. So you would not believe, right? You know, they talk about 10,000 hours, right? To truly master something, you need 10,000 hours of practice. Well, in my opinion, if you are doing this in your head, that time actually counts toward those 10,000 hours. You are totally building up your ears. So I highly recommend you do this type of mental practice as much as you possibly can, and it is going to speed up your progress to a point where you won't even believe it. All right, I hope you enjoyed this lesson on mental practice. It's something that I have done for many, many years, and I think it's helped me immensely, so highly recommend you check it out. And if you do try it out, please let me know how you do with it in the comments. Also, if you're someone who would like some help actually formulating a personalized plan for you, feel free to click the link in the description to set up a free strategy call with either myself or one of my teammates.
Получается, я как бы, понимаешь, я как бы не в теме. Вот музыкант, он получается как бы мошенник, да? Ну типа того, ну да. Мужик, ты просто говоришь на себя. Ладно. Это не важно, ну да. Ну пока так, да, он на себе так говорил, народу мало. Ну нет, Это тоже так, да. Да, да. У тебя об этом нет. Это наоборот, то есть ногам это тебе говорит. Хорошо сказал сейчас, да. А, да это что ли? Ну вот это он и нет. Наоборот, ты такой. Ну наоборот, ну это он о себе так говорит, значит, да. Ну наоборот, да наоборот, значит, ну нет, ну наоборот, да.
When it comes to smartphones, there are a few aspects that age quickly, and a few that don't. You've got things like processing power, you've got things like cameras. They're improving so fast each year that some mid-range devices can make mincemeat of flagships from just a few years ago. But then you've got materials, the quality of the display, and subtler things like how good the vibration motor is. And it's in these aspects that older flagship smartphones come out on top versus cheaper, newer ones. Those phones may look just as good on a spec sheet, but they'll feel nothing alike when you pick them up. Enter the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus, a phone that is recent enough that it still comes out on top in terms of power and cameras, but is now old enough that you're getting those premium quality materials for not a huge amount of money. But how much? If you're really keen on getting one brand new, you're looking at somewhere between $450 and $500. But things... When it comes to smartphones, there are a few aspects that age quickly, and a few that don't. You've got things like processing power, you've got things like cameras. They're improving so fast each year that some mid-range devices can make mincemeat of flagships from just a few years ago. But then you've got materials, the quality of the display, and subtler things like how good the vibration motor is. And it's in these aspects that older flagship smartphones come out on top versus cheaper, newer ones. Those phones may look just as good on a spec sheet, but they'll feel nothing alike when you pick them up. Enter the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus, a phone that is recent enough that it still comes out on top in terms of power and cameras, but is now old enough that you're getting those premium quality materials for not a huge amount of money. But how much? If you're really keen on getting one brand new, you're looking at somewhere between $450 and $500. But things get really interesting when you start looking at the refurbished options. You can get the S9 Plus for about $330, the standard S9 for about $280, and then, if you're willing to accept one in worse condition, as low as $199. Alright, late last year, Dave2D made a video about how this was a brilliant phone for $500, and since then the phone has become not just even cheaper, but even better. Take a listen to this. When the S9 Plus launched, it got good reviews. It was a great but unsurprising upgrade, with a 4 to 5 star rating across the board. The main complaints were that it's expensive considering it's an iterative upgrade, AR emojis kinda sucked, and it had a software skin that felt sluggish. So, fast forward a year, and whilst AR emoji continues to make me look like I should really get some help, the phone's other two weaknesses have been more than just fixed. We've had One UI, which has massively boosted performance. You'll notice it when you're flicking through your recent apps, or changing the modes of the camera. We've got a night mode, which is not just a fresh coat of paint, but saves battery too. And this new material design brings the phone more in line with Google's own. I was never a fan of the way Samsung's previous Space Age theme looked, but One UI has kind of turned that negative to a positive. There have also been subtler upgrades. Samsung has tweaked the front camera to allow it to better expose your face, and it now lets you, like the S10, adjust the field of view when taking selfies. They've also added in the same scene detection algorithm you get on the newer phones. Another example of a cool new feature that comes with this Android 9 upgrade is, say for example you've turned off auto-rotate because you usually use your phone in portrait, but then for one particular task you wanted to use landscape. You now get given this little indicator in the corner that lets you temporarily switch orientation. The point being that, compared to the original Samsung Experience skin that the phone launched with, there has just been a whole load of quality of life improvements. When it comes to flagship smartphone pricing, and there are exceptions, but this is what tends to happen. The phone launches, and for at least a month it's almost impossible to get it below the launch price. Then a couple of deals and discounts start coming in. You might be able to get 10% off. We see the most significant drops though when new phones come out from the same company. And so the S9 Plus saw one drop when the Note 9 came out, roughly 6 months in. And then another when the S10 came out, in total 1 year later. After this point, once the phones get effectively replaced, whilst it will continue to fall in price, the rate at which it falls will be lower. Long story short, right now is a sweet spot. Right now, this phone makes sense. At close to $350, the kinds of phones you could alternatively buy this year if you wanted brand new are things like the Huawei P30 Lite, the Red Magic Mars, or the Xiaomi Mi 9 SE. And those are all good phones, but you'll struggle to find devices that have IP68 water resistance, phones that can do wireless charging, phones with dual speaker setups, or even just a camera that is this consistently good. Don't get me wrong, there are reasons why you might want to buy a newer, cheaper phone as opposed to a maybe used flagship, but performance is not one of them. A top-end chip from last year is still going to massively outperform any kind of current mid-range chip. If you're a gamer, then games are still going to run better on this phone than them. You might have seen my video on the best smartphones of 2019 so far, where I mentioned that this smartphone is a better buy than the Galaxy Note 9. And to clarify, the Note 9 is similar to the S9 Plus but with a noticeably larger battery. It's a better phone all round, but the thing is, I couldn't find one for less than about $500. And so the takeaway is, if you can find an amazing deal on it, then it's worth going for. But from what I've seen, the S9 is consistently better bang for your buck. Right now at least. And yeah, this video shouldn't take away from the appeal of the S10 phones either. They are a massive improvement in not just